begin deur saam te lees, 'n stukkie in die Bybel uit, Psalm 8, baie bekende psalm. Here ons Heer, hoe magtig is U naam oor die hele aarde. U wat U luister, hoor die hemelruim vestig. In die mond van kleuters en suigelinge het U mag gevestig vanweë U teestanders, om vyande en wraakgierige stil te maak. Maar ek na die hemelruim kyk, die werk van U vingers, die maan en die sterre wat U gevestig het. Wat is 'n mens dan dat U aan hom dink, 'n mensekind, dat U aan hom aandag skenk? Het hom net minder as 'n hemelse wese gemaak, het hom met eer en majesteit gekroon. U laat hom heers oor die werk van U hande. U het alles onder sy voete gestel. Al die klein vee en beeste, ja selfs die diere van die veld, die voëls van die hemel, die visse van die see wat verbytrek op hulle roetes deur die oseane. Here ons Heer, hoe magtig is U naam oor die hele aarde. Ja, ek weet nie of julle wat hierna toe ook gesien het, hoe pragtig is die maan nie. As jy nie het nie, so pad huis toe, kyk daarna, want het my nog jy sal dink aan die psalm, vers 4 en 5, wanneer ek na U hemelruim kyk, die werk van U vingers, die maan en die sterre wat U gevestig het. Baie belangrik, die vraag daarna, wat is 'n mens dan dat U aan hom dink? 'n mensekind dat U aan hom aandag skenk. So ja, ons verwonder ons aan die skepping van die Here. Ek sê, kyk na die pragtige maan, as hier na toe kom, en as ons uitgaan sal dit nog duideliker wees. Maar dan die vraag, wat Dawid die vraag, wat is die mens dan wat hy aan hom dink? Nou, die vraag, dit is 'n vraag, maar daarmee sal ons ook stel, God dink aan ons. Ja, wonderlik, wie is ons dat God aan ons sou dink? Maar ja, dankie tog dat ons sy beeld is, dat hy ons geskep het na sy beeld, dat ons sy kinders is, en dat ons in sy gedagtes is. Het is goed dat wanneer ons in bepaalde situasies is, ook in beproewings is, in situasies, mense wat vir ons sê, ek dink aan jou, maar salaam sê God, dink aan ons. Ons gaan, voordat ons by sessie 6 uitkom, gaan ons kyk na die video, wat gesprek is met 'n persoon wat tot bekering gekom het, Nabil Qureshi, wat 'n Christen geword het, moslim was. Ongelukkig is hy jong oorlede, so 30 jaar oud, mediese dokter gewees. Maar kom ons onder andere daarna kyk, dit is ook 'n goeie samevatting van dinge wat ons oor gesels het die afgelope 6 weke. En dis so 13 minute lank die video. En ons sal hoor dinge soos die drie-eenheid en al daai tipe van goeders wat ter sprake kom. So dis kom ons maar daarmee begin en dan gaan ons verder gaan met sessie 6. Dit net so vir 'n kwartier daarmee verder gaan. Maar kom ons luister eers gou kyk na hierdie video.
Well, here we are, and we're back with an exciting interview today with Nabil Qureshi. Again, he's the author of Seeking Allah and Finding Jesus, a devout Muslim encounters Christianity. And I am really eager for Nabil, for you to have your story shared with our viewers today. And by the way, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Robbie. It's a privilege.
Yeah, I'm so glad. And I have gotten to know you a little bit over the past couple of weeks as I've researched your story, read, and really the entire book here. And delighted for our people to, again, hear and then be so encouraged with what has happened in your life for the sake of Jesus Christ and the gospel. Maybe we start with, tell the viewers a little bit about your background. You grew up in a devout Muslim and very loving American home. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, my parents are from Pakistan. I was born and raised in the States. And being that they're from Pakistan, it was their desire to raise a devout Muslim child here in the States. So growing up, I learned how to pray the 5 daily prayers, pray them regularly. By the age of 5, I had memorized the last 7 chapters of the Quran and recited those regularly in my 5 daily prayers. And I actually finished the entire Quran recitation in Arabic by the age of 5. So it was a very devout Muslim life, but my parents also came with some presuppositions about the West. They see the immorality, they see the way people commit adultery, and they see things on TV, and the immodest dress, and they impute all of that to Christianity because they see the West as a Christian area. So not only was it me practicing Islam, but they had also kind of taught me to defend myself against Christianity. And that's a common thing for Muslims around the world to come to the West with. And so growing up then, I was a devout Muslim, yes, but I was also trained with arguments to challenge and respond to the gospel.
How did that affect your childhood then, growing up, compared to like other American kids? You've kind of spoken that a little bit, but just flesh that out a little bit more.
Well, you know, what I really noticed was, for us, Islam was our identity. Like, we knew Islam, we were Muslim, and that's what we were representing wherever we went. My parents really had no choice. My mother, she would wear the burqa, so obviously whenever someone saw her, immediately they're thinking Islam. And I realized that the other kids didn't really own their faith. Yeah, they might call themselves Christian, yeah, they might go to church, but that didn't affect the way they lived. It didn't affect the way they thought. And so that was something that made us even more proud. As Muslims, we thought, we are following the true God. He affects and permeates every aspect of our lives. Whereas in the West, people realize their faith is false, and that's why it doesn't really affect the way they live. That's kind of how we subconsciously thought.
Mm-hmm. So then, for your whole childhood, this is how you were brought up, this is your thinking, these were your convictions, and this was your identity, which really stuck with me as well. But there was one particular friendship that you developed, and maybe you can tell us what age that was, and how that over time started to introduce you to Christianity.
Absolutely. It was something I did regularly. Was I would challenge people on the gospel. Friends would say to me, "Nabil, do you know Jesus?" And of course, Muslims have a very developed view of Jesus. They believe he's the Messiah. They believe that he's a miracle-working man. He's sinless. Muslims believe Jesus is going to come back at the end of times. And so I would have a script ready to give, and I would challenge people on their view of Jesus.
And by the way, how did Christians generally do when you did challenge them on their faith?
Miserably. What I realized very early on was that even the slightest challenge on the Bible, on the reliability or the compilation of the Bible, or on Jesus' deity, or on the Trinity especially, no one really knew more than just enough to say what they were told to say. They didn't really know why they believed what they believed, didn't know how to defend it. And so as part of me honoring Islam, I would challenge Christians. Because you see, Muslims see the Trinity as polytheism, and that's offensive to Muslims. And so in so challenging one specific Christian, for the first time, and this is when I was a freshman in college, for the first time someone was able to actually respond to my challenge. And I realized this guy not only knows some information about his faith, but he actually cares about his faith. And so we developed this friendship that resulted from me challenging him on the Bible. And that's how I began to get introduced to the power and truth of the gospel.
His name was David, is that right? And I love about in your book how you talk about David was loving to you, patient with you, became a friend to you, which meant so much to you. It wasn't just this all just a...
I do think that, I believe what Jesus says. Jesus says that unless you're willing to pick up your cross and follow me, you are not worthy of me. So the gospel is not just, hey, do you want to be saved? Hey, do you want to live a better life? It's, are you ready to die for the sake of this message? And that's something that requires someone to lay down their life. Now, if I'm telling someone, hey, lay down your life, but they don't know they can trust me, why would they ever listen to me? You need to have a relationship with someone when you're sharing the gospel with them, if they're going to hear it. Now, of course, I'm not saying that street preaching doesn't work. I've preached on the side of the street too, and that does work at times, but by far and away, the most powerful way to share the gospel is through relationships.
Right. So through this friendship and relationship with this man, David, you were driven to a point of really just a decision between Islam and Christianity. Tell us about how that happened and what happened.
For a Muslim raised in the West, devout Muslims, a lot of it has to do with apologetics and with truth. What is the truth? Islam very clearly denies some things about Jesus. Yes, Jesus is miracle working, he's the Messiah, but it denies that he ever died on the cross. It denies that he ever claimed to be God. And if he never died on the cross, how did he rise from the dead? So Islam denies the death, deity, and resurrection of Jesus. Well, according to Paul, what do you need to believe in order to be saved? If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, so the deity, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. The very three things Islam denies, you have to believe in order to be saved. And so for me, it was a matter of trying to prove that those things didn't happen in order to establish the case for Islam. Well, as I was trying to disprove those things, I I realized the evidence for Jesus' death, deity, and resurrection was very strong.
So that must have been difficult for you again in your devout faith at the time, and all of a sudden some restlessness began.
It wasn't overnight. It took years for me to see this evidence and for it to compile and for the tectonic shifts to happen in my mind. And when I realized the evidence was strong, then I turned my eyes to Islam and I said, how strong is the evidence for Islam? And to my shock, it was far weaker. When I leveled the same criticisms I had leveled on Christianity on Islam, the foundation fell apart. And so that's when it became a matter between me and God of actually asking Him to show me the truth.
So how did you actually come to Christ? Dreams were a fundamental part of what God used, and that's even, as Muslims grow up, they take dreams very seriously. Tell our viewers about that. That's fascinating, exciting.
Well, for Muslims, most Muslims don't believe they can commune with God. Some modern Muslims do, and some Sufi Muslims do, but generally in history and the way that Islam has traditionally been taught is that God is kind of removed from you. And the only way you can really get guidance directly from Him is through dreams. And Muslims have a prayer, it's called Salat Istikhara, where they specifically ask God to give them dreams for guidance. And so I ask God for visions and for dreams, and I'm not alone in that. Approximately 50 to 70% of former Muslims who are now Christians came partially through visions and dreams.
That's awesome. And you had one very specific dream. Tell us that.
This dream was the one that convinced me. I had one that was very symbolic, and then I had a follow-up dream, and I also had a vision, but this dream was powerful. In this dream, I was standing at the threshold of a narrow door. This door was just wide enough to fit me, and just tall enough to fit me. I mean, in my dream, it was like, wow, this door is narrow. And at the other side of this doorway was a room that was set at the feast. And people were sitting down in nice clothes at these round tables, and it was like a wedding feast. And I knew in my dream that that room was heaven. I wanted to get into that room, but I couldn't, because at the other end of the doorway was my friend David. Now, he wasn't blocking me per se, he was looking forward. In fact, all the people in the room were looking forward, waiting for the owner or the speaker to come and start the event. But I couldn't get in because he was blocking the way, and so I looked at him and I said, David, I thought we were going to eat together. And he says, you haven't responded. And in the dream, right there, I knew I needed to respond to the invitation David was giving me in order to come into heaven. But this is where it got crazy. When I woke up, I told my friend David the dream. And he said, Nabil, this dream is so clear. Just go to Luke chapter 13. And I went to Luke 13 for the first time. I had never been to Luke 13 before. And when I opened it up, there was a section there that was titled, The Narrow Door. And when I saw it, my heart just stopped.
I bet it did, yeah.
And I'm going to paraphrase it. Basically what it says is Jesus was going through the towns and villages preaching the good news. And the disciples said, Lord, are many going to be saved? And he said, make every effort to enter through that narrow door, because many will try and few will be able. And you will see people sitting inside at the feast of the kingdom of heaven. Make every effort to enter before the owner comes and closes that door. And so I knew that God had given me a dream straight out of the Bible, and He placed me inside a parable, showed me exactly where I was, and He left my decision up to me. It was very clear for me at that point what I needed to do.
So then what did happen from that point? Because again, your story is amazing in the sense that it wasn't just necessarily that day, but it took a while for you to actually leave your life to
You know, Robbie, in order for a Muslim to become a Christian, they have to be willing to give up a lot. Depending on how devout their family is, their identity is usually wound up in Islam. So it wasn't just me saying, I'm going to change my beliefs.
That's right.
It's me saying, I'm going to leave my family and everything they stood for, all the way back to Muhammad's time. I mean, my last name's Quraysh. If Muhammad had a last name, it would have been Quraysh. He was part of the Quraysh tribe. And so I had to give up everything. My mother was the daughter of a Muslim missionary, so I had to give up all that. I'm the eldest son in my family. I'm the one who's supposed to bring honor to the family. If I become Christian, that's the worst thing I could possibly do. And so I have to think, not only am I giving up my family, I am consigning my family's reputation to the flames, basically. And so it was something that I needed a lot of time to wrestle through and to pray through. And I asked God to comfort me through it. And it was when I read His Word that I received the promises of God, Mark 10:29. And also the encouragement from God to go ahead and make.
And you went through a whole time of mourning in this too. Remember, you came to Matthew chapter 5 and the Beatitudes. Beatitudes, and blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted.
Beautiful.
And so that was one of the turning points as well.
I can't tell you how beautiful that message was. In the Quran, there's nothing that says I'm giving you comfort if you're hurting. The Quran says, do this, do that, do this, do that. But there in the Bible, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted.
Wow.
It was like my heart was just electrified into life when I read that, and my life has never been the same.
Wow, I love that. And even now today, you are now serving with Reverend Zechariah International Ministries, and now you're an apologist, speaking about the gospel and defending the Christian faith to those who oppose it. Tell us a little bit about that, maybe if you want to.
Well, for me, it's a matter of sharing the truth and beauty and transformative power of the gospel. I mean, this message changes everything. If God came into this world to take our sins, that means He loves us. He loves us even though we sin against Him. And then He takes a look at us. While He's on the cross, bleeding and dying for us, the words we should remember are, as I have loved you, so love one another. That's the call we're given as Christians. He's given us everything we need in this life and this afterlife. So all we have to do is follow Him and pour ourselves out for the sake of those around us. And that transformative life is the message of the gospel. There's nothing like it.
Amen. That is so encouraging to me, and I know for our viewers here right now. And I just love when the Lord had you in a place where you were defending the Muslim faith against Christians who could not. Now God has transformed you, and now you are defending the gospel for those, again, who need to find the answers.
And it's a privilege to do so.
Nabil Qureshi, again, with us right now. So excited, again, the author of Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, and his encounter with the Christian gospel. This book is available on our e-store. And thank you so much for being with us today. What a blessing.
My pleasure.
Dan sê ek, toe julle gesien, toe ek sê die samevatting, daar was soveel dinge wat ons oor gepraat het, afgelope paar weke wat in ter sprake gekom het. En een van die sake wat vanaand ter sprake kom, is juist ook een van die goed wat hy genoem het, eintlik iets wat vir ons vreemd op die oor is. Ek weet nie of julle gehoor het wat hy sê, dat een van die sake wat hom dit vir hom moeilik gemaak het om 'n Christen te word, is dat sy ma was die dogter van 'n moslimsender. So dit klink nie vir ons reg nie. Ek weet sendeling praat nie van Christene het sendeling. Maar dit is juist waaroor vanaand se sessie gaan, is dat sendingwerk is vir moslems geweldig belangrik. Iets wat hulle dawa noem, en iets wat ons regtig baie goed van moet kennis neem, want hulle is besig om te mobiliseer, om wel oral die wêreld in te gaan, soos wat hulle al dikwels, soos julle hoor, al doen natuurlik. Dit is iets wat vir moslems aanbeveel word. Hulle word selfs aangemoedig om, as hulle verlof neem van die werk, om daai verlof nie te neem om te gaan vakansie doen, maar om daai verlof te neem om te gaan sendingwerk. En dit is iets wat hulle met groter dringendheid begin doen, soos wat die tyd aangaan. So onthou ek het so 'n tydjie terug vir julle ook foto's gewys van daar in Durban, by die Islamic Center, waar hulle besig is, elke maandag aand het hulle klasse, waar hulle mense doelbewus voorberei vir sendingwerk. Nie noodwendig onder Christene nie, wie ook al, dit Hindus is daar in hulle omgewing, of mense van die Afrika tradisionele godsdienste, maar natuurlik, die eerste prys is Christene, vir wie hulle dan voorberei in terme van sendingwerk. En een van die dinge wat ek ook vir julle gesê het, in terme van, as ons kyk na inleidende kursus, wat ons nog nie besig was, sal baie van die dinge wat ons hier gepraat het oor, sal jy in ander inleidende kursusse kry, soos sê maar die 5 pilare van Islam, of die artikels van die geloof van Islam. Maar iets wat ek nog in geen ander inleidende kursus raakgeloop het, trouwens meer gevorderde kursusse nie raakgeloop het nie, dit is die hele saak van dawa. En so ek sê, dit is geweldig belangrik. Nou, soos julle baie goed weet, is die Christelike godsdienst is by uitstek 'n sending godsdienst. Die laaste woorde van die Here Jesus, soos julle weet, Matteus 28, nee, wat sê, gaan dan na al die nasies toe, maak die mense met disciples, doop in die naam van die Vader, Seun en die Gees, en leer om alles te onthou wat ek julle geleer het. Handelinge 1 vers 8, en as hulle krag ontvang onder die Heilige Gees vir julle kom en ons om my getuies wees en die Judea, Samaria tot die uiteindes van die aarde. En dan Pinkster, ek kan sê dis die geboortedag van die Christelike Kerk, uitstorting van die Heilige Gees. En hoe die boodskap, die evangelie, juist daar verkondig word in die tale van die mense wat daar is. En nogal baie opvallend, jy moet gaan kyk in Genesis 10, die deel van die verhaal van die toring van Babel, die mense wat sê maar ons verwerp God, en die oorgang na Genesis 11 toe, wat in opstand kom tegen God, en daar is 'n lys van name van die volke wat daar is, gaan vergelyk dit met Handelinge 2, die mense wat daar was, by die uitstorting van die Heilige Gees, en die twee lystes oor mekaar skuif, te sê van die mense wat God verwerp het, en dat die evangelie na hulle toe gaan, uit en uit, 'n sending boodskap, so ek weet, dit is die wortel van die Christelike geloof, is sendinge, en baie ander godsdienste het nie 'n sendingvisie nie, kan nie eintlik veel omgee vir ander mense wat by hulle moet aansluit nie. Maar die moslims het so 'n sendingvisie om eintlik die hele wêreld in te neem vir Islam. As jy kyk op bladsy 25 van die handleiding, het ek dit daar genoem wat eintlik veelzeggend is, 'n boek wat Patrick Soudeo geskryf het oor die titel Dawa, en wat julle dan weet wat is Dawa, maar wat vir my baie betekenisvol is die subtitel van die boek, The Islamic Strategy for Reshaping the Modern World. Dit is 'n mondvol. The Islamic Strategy for Reshaping the Modern World. So Islam het die idee om die moderne wêreld nie net te bereik met die boodskap van Islam en mense moslems te maak, maar om die hele status quo te verander, sodat dit, Engelse woord gebruik, Muslim-like is. Dit moet lyk soos Islam, die hele wêreld, is dat hulle in gedagte het, is om mense moslems te maak, maar dat dit moet lyk soos Islam. Dit is wat hulle hele doel daar rondom is. En hulle doen geweldig baie moeite rondom dit. As mense gaan kyk op die internet, hoeveel bronne is daar beskikbaar om Islam te studeer. Dit is wat gratis aangebied word. Hoeveel kursusse is daar, jy kan inskryf, gratis 'n kursus doen in soveel aspekte van Islam. En hoë kwaliteit wat hulle ook beskikbaar stel. Pamflette, boeke, alles wat gratis beskikbaar gestel word. Die strate van Durban loop, sal jou baie van dit aangebied word. En dan hulle sal ook besig om dit bevatlik te maak vir die omgewing waar hulle is. As julle gaan kyk daar op bladsy 26, waar die United Kingdom Islamic Mission, wat hulle nou sê in terme van daal, van hoe mense te bereik, 3 sake. Die boodskap van Islam moet relevant gemaak word vir die spesifieke gemeenskap waarin dit geneem word. Die boodskap van Islam moet logies, oortuigend en vriendelik gebring word in die taal van die mense vir wie dit gebring word. En die boodskap van Islam moet nie op mense afgedwing word nie, maar eerder deur gesprekke en sosiale interaksie. Nou, een saak wat ook die genoem is deur Nabil Qureshi, is die hele saak van verhoudings. En dis ook iets wat ons oor gepraat het, is in terme van om verhoudings te skep hier waar ons is in Bloemfontein. Dis goed, ons het planne om te sê, ons gaan op ander plek ook evangelie bring, bijvoorbeeld Durban en so meer, waar ons 'n groot konsentrasie van moslems het. Maar dit is baie belangrik dat ons hier verhoudings bou. Ek het hier geskryf, ons gemeentes in Pretoria, wat al met die moskees daar goeie verhouding gebou het, sodat hulle op 'n bepaalde gereelde grondslag, ek weet nie of het een keer per semester of wat ook al is nie, maar dat gaan eet hulle by mekaar, eet saam en gesels met mekaar, nie om te sê ons is van dieselfde godsdienst nie, maar juist sodat daar verhoudings gebou word, want binne 'n verhouding kan jy 'n gesprek tree. Binne 'n verhouding ervaar jy 'n gemaklikheid en nie 'n geforseerde om die evangelie op te dra. So dis iets wat ons regtig na moet kyk, ook hierso in Bloemfontein. Julle sal onthou ek het vir julle gedoen, dat so oor 2 weke, ek dink is môre oor 2 weke, wat die dosent van Oxford hier na toe kom, Taj Agi, en dat ons daar in die kerk sal ongedeeld gaan gee, en mens kan hoor, waaroor gesels, hy is 'n moslim, het gesê, maar jy is so 'n kwessie van kom ons bou verhoudings, dit is so geweldig belangrik. So tussen hakies, die David na wie Qureshi verwys het, is David Wood. Nou, al albei se name het ek op die bord geskryf, nou eers maar altyd by mekaar gekom het, ek het maar op die groep weer sit. So gaan kyk asseblief na hulle gesprekke rondom Islam. As jy nou gesien het, dit is regtig opbouend om daarna te luister. 'n saak wat ek ook net vinnig na wil verwys, wat ons oor gesels het al, is die saak van gasvryheid. Dit is 'n belangrike saak in Islam, is om gasvry te wees. En interessant is dat al 3 die Abrahamitiese godsdienste, die Christene, Moslems en Jode, neem die saak van gasvryheid terug na die engele wat gekom het by Abraham en wat hy vir hom kos voorberei het en so meer. Maar hierdie is nie 'n toevallige gasvryheid nie. En dit is natuurlik goed dat ons, as iemand die kerkgebou ook al kom, dat ons nie hulle aanstoot gee nie. Dis al goed. Maar hierdie ons gaan absoluut daarop uit om doelbewus gasvry te wees. Nou, ek sal onthou, ek het vir julle op 'n stadium gesê, kyk na daai dokumentêr Stranger at the Gate, en ek glo baie van julle het. Maar as mens daarna kyk, dan sien 'n mens die krag van gasvryheid. Die van julle wat gesien het, sal onthou net die storie van jou wat oorlog gemaak het in Afghanistan en so meer teruggekom het Amerika toe, die plaaslike moskee wou gaan bom het, daar opgedaag het om te kyk waar gaan hy die bom sit, meeste skade te doen, en met die liefde wat hy daarvan is, die gasvryheid waarmee hy hom oorweldig het, en dat hy heeltemal nie net afgesien het van sy plan nie, maar dat hy self 'n moslim geword het. Nou ja, dis natuurlik slegte nuus dat dit die geval was. Maar die punt het uiteindelik is die krag van gasvryheid. En dit is tog 'n Christelike deeg. Dit is iets wat ons ook op moet fokus in die algemeen, maar as ek sê in terme van verhoudingsbou ook met moslems is dit baie belangrik. Sake wat natuurlik ook inspel op hierdie saak van dawa, hoe hulle sendingwerk doen, mense bereik. Wat nou byvoorbeeld wat baie bekend is, ons is Gift of the Givers, wat 'n moslim organisasie is. En ek weet dat daai ouens wonderlike werk doen. Ek weet rarig, jy moet rarig wel fout soek as jy dit nie kan sê. Dit is net so. Maar sonder om Islam voorop te druk en dit betref, bevorder dat jy Islamse saak, want almal weet, hulle is moslim. En almal sê, joh, kyk wat so wonderlike werk doen hierdie mense. En dit is natuurlik heeltemal waar. Maar dit is ook deel van die missie van dawa, mense te bereik op watter manier ook al. So dit is iets wat ons ook as Christene weer opnuut na moet kyk. Het interessantheid is dat Anton het geskryf hier so in die stukkies oor iemand wat op 'n plattelandse dorpie gekom het en daar sit 'n paar moslims en eet vis en chips, of was dit net chips, ek weet nie, slap chips. En so Anton is hier gewees wat sê, man, kom eet saam met ons. Hulle ken hom van geen kant af nie. En hy ook nie vir hulle nie. En sê, man, jy is welkom, ons het net so'n slap chips, kom sit saam met ons hier. Wildvreemdeling. Maar dit sê iets van 'n ingesteldheid rondom gasvryheid. En daarmee saam wil dit ook iets vir ons sê van 'n vrymoedigheid om die evangelie te neem na sulke mense. Die woord sulke mense klink al klaar bietjie vreemd. Sulke mense klink so half typerend, nee. stereotyperend. Maar ek dink baie van ons idees is dat moslems is in die eerste plek sommer net aggressief. Hulle wil sommer net moeilikheid maak om hulle is soos 'n renoster, hulle word nie kwaad nie, hulle is kwaad. En dit is nie so, hulle is nogal baie akkommoderend. En wat uiteindelik vir ons sê, man, die deur is meer oop as wat jy dink om met hulle te kommunikeer.